Hey guys, Coach Zach here. Just want to touch base with you real quick before we get into today's episode. First of all, just thank you so much. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening on a weekly basis. Thank you for sharing with your friends if you've been doing so. We've been seeing the numbers on this podcast skyrocket the last few weeks and months, and it's been really, really fun to do. It's been really fun to see those numbers go up, and we're just happy that you guys are enjoying it as well. So, but first of all, I just want to start today by saying thank you. If you haven't already, you can go ahead and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We're putting videos out every week as well with the podcast, with clips as well from the podcast, and some funny little segments outside of the podcast, like questions and answers, our little game show we do where we have someone do the workout Fran, and then they have 2 minutes to answer some trivia questions. So this week is actually Eric, who's one of the hosts on the podcast as well, so you can go watch him suffer through Fran and trying to answer some questions. But again, just thank you for supporting us. We appreciate everything you guys do for us. We hope you guys are enjoying this podcast as much as we are. So today's episode, we're going to go back in time a little bit. I know we have a lot of new listeners lately, so you might not know that Primal Athletics Radio is actually the second iteration of this podcast. We started a few years back with a podcast called Finding Fitness, and it started as just a way for us to tell the stories of some of our amazing members at CrossFit Nashua and CrossFit Sauhegan. That kind of transformed into the coaches sitting down, what we call Coach's Corner, where we give little health tips and tricks here and there. And then it's kind of transformed over the years into what you see today, with us still giving out some tips here and there, telling some stories, and bringing on some guests inside the CrossFit world. So we're going to go back in time a little bit today, get back to our roots a little bit, and tell one of our amazing members' stories, Sally from CrossFit Sauhegan. And Sally's going to tell us a story about how she came into CrossFit hoping to improve her physical health, but also found that her mental health improved dramatically as well. I think this is a topic that's so important in these times. A lot of us are going through a lot of stress right now with this lockdown period. So it's ever more important to focus on our mental health as well as our physical health here. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode a lot. Sally's going to tell her story of how it improved her mental health. And I'm also going to include some links in the show notes underneath iTunes, YouTube, wherever you're listening. There'll be some links for you to click on to read more about how exercise can dramatically improve your mental health. I'll link a great video to Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who does a fantastic job of explaining in kind of layman's terms what happens inside of our brain when we exercise and how we can use exercise as a powerful force to improve our mental health. And if you get really nerdy like me and you like to read the scientific stuff, I'll put some nice studies in there as well on the benefits of exercise and mental health. So again, just thank you guys. Thank you for downloading, subscribing, sharing with your friends. Again, we hope you enjoy this as much as we do, and enjoy today's episode.
All right, everyone, we are back with Finding Fitness. Today we have a very special guest from CrossFit Sauhegan, Sally, joining us today. How are we doing?
I'm doing well, a little nervous.
Don't be. It's going to be a great chat. Well, thanks for joining us and taking the time. Today we're going to get into the CrossFit's tie and effect on the mental health and different aspects of mental health. That's what we're going to dive deep into today. And we're going to have a ton of fun while we do it. So first, let's start off with a little background about you.
Yep.
Let's just start with the typical, how'd you find CrossFit?
Yeah, so I have always exercised. I've never done necessarily any organized team sports or anything, but it's always been something that I've always had exercise in my life. And I always wanted to try something new. So my husband, when I met him, he did rock climbing and ice climbing, and so that's what I tried to, or we hiked, or we just were always active. And one day, Rachel from CrossFit Sauhegan posted a really funny little blurb on Facebook about how ridiculous of a workout she did that day at CrossFit. And I was like, what's this CrossFit? I can try that.
Yeah.
Give me a chance. And so then I decided to try a 5:30 class, and I think Eric was the coach that first day, and I was like, what's a WOD? And what am I doing? But I had, that first time that I went was eye-opening to me, because I had, what happened honestly was that every other workout I'd ever done in my life, so I have tried all of it, right? I've done Zumba and step aerobics, and I even have like the Buns of Steel video. I mean, I've done all of it. And within 5 or 10 minutes of the class, I am immediately looking at the clock and thinking about my to-do list and wondering if I have time to get to whatever I needed to do after. And I was physically there, but mentally I wasn't there. And it actually caused a little bit of anxiety because I was thinking about all the other stuff I had to do in my life. And I wasn't really like totally enjoying the moment of exercise. Well, when you went into CrossFit that first day, right, we had this set of exercises we had to do and we had a time frame, and I had to just keep trying to push through, and I was working so hard. And when I was done, I had exhausted every single part of my energy, right? Like when you have anxiety, so I'll talk about that in a minute, but when you have anxiety, you have all this extra fight or flight energy that just sits in your body, it just stays there all the time. And so when I went to CrossFit, I had just exerted like all that energy, and I was sitting there gasping for air. And I had a moment where I was like, when I finished, like I could breathe. Like all of a sudden I felt like I could mentally breathe, because for that time frame, my head was only there. Like I couldn't think about everything else, because I was like, okay, 3 more. Can I do 3 more? And like just counting down. Like I wasn't a mom or a wife or anything else. I was just trying to get through that moment. So when it finished, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So that's when it started, and then I started going all the time.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's super interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard like a first experience described that way, where like other forms of exercise you're thinking about, like you said, the rest of your day and stuff, versus like what locked you into CrossFit was that you were just like solely focused on CrossFit when you're there for that hour.
So what I was saying to Eric, I think, and Eric and Sarah, I had sent them a message, and I had said to them, like, we talk about the physical benefits of CrossFit, right? And we talk about building up this mental toughness, and that's all wonderful. But like what we don't talk about is like the mental health effects that it has on you, and how in a sense it's almost like a mindfulness. It's almost like a moment where you are nowhere else and you are mindfully in that moment, and that is such a great break for your brain and for your body, like as a person. So so it was just like eye-opening for me, like wow, this is almost like especially for me, because I have debilitating anxiety that I've had for a long stretch of time, and so to have this break mentally where I just can breathe and I feel like I no longer am thinking about everything else, it's like it's just a wonderful moment. Like it's break. So that's why I go to CrossFit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I just finished reading Learning to Breathe Fire. It's like a really great book. I recommend it for like the history of CrossFit. But one of the quotes that Glassman himself in there was, he said, the greatest adaptation to CrossFit is between the years, which is, so it's really cool that you're saying that stuff, because I mean, it's so true. We all have our own different experiences with the first time we try CrossFit, or like why we do CrossFit and stuff like that. But I think everyone can agree on that, like the mental piece that you experience from doing CrossFit and consistently doing CrossFit, especially, translates to everywhere, everything.
Right, and I think that even if you've never had anxiety in your whole life, I think if you've ever done CrossFit, you can agree that when you're in the middle of that, your brain's nowhere else. You can't be. You are physically pushing yourself, mentally pushing yourself, and that's like a wonderful space for you to be in for a moment in the day. Right? I mean...
Yeah. I think most people probably experience some form of anxiety, whether they realize it or not.
Right.
But like people are, different degrees.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear, your experience with that.
Yeah. So I had my first like full-blown panic attack when I was 19. Although I think I always had anxiety, because when I was younger, I always had really bad stomach aches. So I think it was just something that's the form that it took, and I didn't realize it. But when I was 19, I sold my car. I was in college, and I sold my car, and I hopped on a plane to go to Australia. I was going to celebrate New Year's 2000. So yes, I'm 39. New Year's 2000 in Australia, and it was so exciting. And I got on the plane, and I was going from the first leg from Boston to LA, and all of a sudden I felt like I was dying. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what it was at the time, so I had no words, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm dying. And I thought to myself, I have to get off this plane right now so I can say goodbye to my parents. Like, that's like where I was at, and I couldn't, it was awful. So with all panic attacks, at some point you start coming back down. You get like a height, and then you start coming back down. So I got off the plane, and I was running late to catch the next plane. And I ran to the other side of LAX, and I was like, I don't know if I can even get on this flight. And so I called my mom with my calling card numbers, the 32 digits that you have to dial in, the prepaid calling card. I called her, and I'm telling her, like, listen, I'm dying on the plane, so I can't get on the next plane because I'm gonna die again. And she knew that we had like 4 minutes to catch the flight. She knew I was really late, and so she just said to me, well, you can either get on the plane and know you might have another one, or you can come back home and regret it for the rest of your life. I was like, okay. So I hopped back on the plane, and she gave me other advice. She told me tell the lady who helps on the plane there, the
Flight
attendant. Yeah. She said, talk to the flight attendant, let them know, and that might help. So I ended up having a great trip in Australia, and that was wonderful, but when I came home, what started happening was I was just getting more and more panic attacks. And sometimes what happens is they start accruing on top of each other. Mm-hmm. And because you've had one, and they get build up and build up. Mm-hmm. So it becomes, after a while, you get more and more, and it becomes almost debilitating. Like everyday things in life you get fearful of them, or you start panicking about them. Things you never thought of in your whole life, all of a sudden take on a whole new twist. So it took some time. I tried medication, but that, they all have side effects, and I had some things I didn't love about that. Mm-hmm. And then, you talk to therapists, and they all say mindfulness and meditation and exercise and all this wonderful stuff. And so I started doing all that and reading about it. And then just slowly I've gotten to a point where I can manage it more and handle it without medication, luckily. But it still pops up, and it's still there, which is why there's certain things that like I have to make a priority in my life. And so things like I just go to CrossFit because everybody goes to exercise, they tell you it's to lose weight or it's to whatever, these physical benefits, and mine truly is get out all this extra energy because it's no good sitting in me. Right, so
so
that's why I do it.
What are some other strategies so CrossFit obviously, helps a ton, like you're saying. Yeah. What are some other strategies? Like do you meditate? Do you...
Yeah, so I try to meditate. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you have an anxious mind, right? Because it's like a squirrel that just drank 3 gallons of Mountain Dew and smoked a few cigarettes. Like, you're sitting on the pillow and you're like, I'm meditating, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Wait, am I supposed to congratulate myself while I'm meditating? That's not meditating. I have to start all over again. Right? It's just like, it's really hard.
Yeah.
But everybody says that, right? Everybody says it's hard to meditate. It takes practice.
Right.
So I try to do that, of course, eating healthy, not a lot of caffeine, stuff like that. But I think the big thing that I found was talking to people about, or telling somebody. Like when you're in the moment, I used to just like not tell anybody, and I would be embarrassed about it and not say anything. But I notice now when I'm in the moment, I can call like my husband and just say like, I'm having anxiety right now, and then we just talk about something else. But at least for that moment, I've like made it real and I've talked about it. And now it's no longer this thing that's eating me up. Now it's just this other thing that I can push aside, sort of, and keep moving forward. But
Are there any certain events or maybe locations or even like times a day that trigger these anxiety attacks, or is it just kind of come and go?
Yeah, so it depends. So when I was first struggling with anxiety, it would just hit me out of the blue, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and have a panic attack, like gasping for air, unable to. Now I feel like I've less of that rare moment and more of like a situational where like I know more. It's more like when I don't have full control over something, like being on a chairlift, like I can't just hop off the chairlift, so like that's not an option, so I feel kind of stuck, in really small closed spaces. Just the feeling of a loss of control sometimes, and that's pretty common with people who have anxiety. They tell you the same thing, like if they don't mind being if they could just fly the airplane, that would be better than actually being on the airplane. Right? This idea that they can keep making it move forward, that they have control.
Interesting.
How do you talk yourself through when you don't feel like you have control?
Yeah, so I immediately have to call it like it is and say it like out loud. Okay, I'm having anxiety, like this is what it is, and let's like do some breathing, or let's go for a run. Sometimes I will literally just go like for a run, like this idea of just getting all that fight or flight energy that's cooped up in your body, and I always fly. I never fight. I run as fast as I can. Yeah.
Okay. Does it what about like sleep, like falling asleep at night, that sort of stuff?
So falling asleep is fine. Yeah, I tend
okay.
to wait. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night. Just like looking. I have strange dreams, obviously, where I sometimes am gasping for air. Again, it always comes back to like not able to breathe a little bit, like stuck somewhere.
Huh.
So, but yeah, I'll get that when I'm having moments of anxiety. Yep. It's funny. It's a strange thing.
It is, but it's interesting because, like I said, I think a lot of people, maybe there is someone maybe who's going to listen to this that's just kind of like you were like embarrassed to say it out loud.
Right. 10 years ago, I would never have talked about this. I would have been hiding it. I would have been so embarrassed because I would have felt like everyone thought I was crazy.
Right.
And then after a while, I realized like this isn't something like. This is just who I am, and there's some benefits to it. It makes you a little bit more empathetic and understanding, and I feel like sometimes when somebody's really closed off, like they put up a wall, people tend to like walk away from them, but for some reason I feel like I can get through that wall. Like maybe they're just really nervous or anxious or something's going on with them.
Right.
So I feel like I'm a little extra social because of it sometimes. I don't know. I think that everything gives you a benefit, you just don't realize it sometimes, but sometimes it really stinks.
It's hard. It's great that you can like have that point of view on it. Cause
I think you have to, right?
Yeah.
So
I can imagine it's hard to get there though.
It is, and it took a while.
Yeah.
And I was really worried about other people's, like their reactions or what they would think of me, or that was crazy, or.
Right.
And it is what it is.
Yeah.
I just have
crazy.
a little extra.
Very normal, probably. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
I think everybody's a little bit crazy, and like, the more that you can like be okay with your crazy and share it with people,
right?
Kind of the less power it has, and the more you realize like that, everybody posts on social media, everything's great and fantastic and stuff, but that doesn't lead to growth and having a happy life in real life. So.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and it's tough that doesn't help stuff like that either, seeing all that.
Yeah, because then you think posts, oh, everybody's so happy. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
So let's kind of go back to CrossFit, like as a style of training. What like specifically about like how am I trying to ask this? Like what, compared to other styles of training that you've tried, maybe if you want to like talk about a couple, what was it about CrossFit specifically that was like made you like focus so hard for that hour versus
I think almost every other form of exercise that I tried was so like monotonous, right? It was like you sort of do the same thing over and over and over again. And every day is the same. I mean, I would go to the spin class was exactly the same. The kickboxing, it was all like, and that was fine. I mean, any type of movement is great, right? And anytime you can get any of that energy out, it's wonderful. But it wasn't taking a hold of my mind either. It was just sort of just doing it, right? And so I think the mix-up of and every day it's a little bit different, and every day it's a little bit harder, and there are some days where I'm like, I'm really good at this, and there are other days where I'm like, this is awful. I'm like, I'm the worst. But yeah, so I think it's just the mix-up, and every day being different, and going back to those same things where you got better at them, right? Yeah, so. Yeah.
Like the intensity piece isn't in very many other forms of exercise.
Right.
And I mean, like I kind of forget what it's like to not do CrossFit because it's been so long, but it is like, sets and reps, and then once you're done with the strength training, then you go on the elliptical or the cardio thing.
Right.
And there is no like intensity. No. And so I think that's a big part when you're going as hard as you can, and your heart rate is maxed out. It's hard to think about anything else.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like today we did the first part of the WOD, and it was 6 minutes, and I was dripping sweat, and I was like, man, like when have I ever done something for only 6 minutes? And, like my shins were sweating. Like, I'm like, how is this even possible? Right. But that never would have happened in a step aerobics class or in buns of steel. Right? Seriously.
Yeah, and then like today's WOD is an example where we work as hard as you can for 6 minutes. We give you 5 minutes rest, and then you do it again for another 6 minutes.
Yes.
And you work as hard as you can. Whereas other modalities or different types of training, maybe you do that 6 minutes, you realize that you worked that hard, and you're like, all right, that's good for today.
Right.
Or like you're halfway through a 20-minute AMRAP of like 4 out of the 5 movements you absolutely hate.
Right.
And you're like, why do I do this to myself? And you're questioning yourself. But those little things of like mentally overcoming and like not stopping at the 10-minute mark and keep getting like, just get that extra round or extra rep.
Right.
It's like those little mental battles can help tremendously with stuff like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. There's so many times where I'm like, we didn't need to do 5 rounds. We could have just done 3. 3 was good.
Right.
That's why we do 5.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like...
There's also the feeling of, like, because everybody's doing that, like, you really do feel that sense of community more than you would even if you went to the same exact, I don't even know, Zumba class every day. I probably keep coming back to the same ones, even though I've done all of them.
Yeah.
But, like, you go to those same classes with those same people, and you know, how you doing? But it's different in CrossFit because you're all pushing yourself all so much that you're almost, like, laughing together, like, and you're, like, feeling it, like, you're all... It's just like, so you're so vulnerable because you've like really pushed yourself as far as you could. Right. So I don't know. There's just something about it. You really build up more of a sense of camaraderie, I guess.
Another quote from that book was like, everybody like going to do the WOD is everybody agreeing to test their limits.
Right.
Whereas it's like like a Zumba class or a spin class and stuff, it's like everyone's there to get a good workout in and sweat, but it's not like you're not staring at something like Murph on the whiteboard,
right?
And we're all like, all right, the next hour we're gonna suffer all together. And there's definitely something to be said about that for the mental aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Have you found that, like, so you said you immediately noticed the the benefit of how it helped with, anxiety or whatever. Over time, has it like gotten better, or do you find that like if you take a week off, is it?
Oh, I'm a mess. Yeah. So I don't know. I can't say that like over time, like it's made my anxiety like all better, because like that's just, I think I'll always have anxiety as a companion in my life, like, and that's fine.
Right.
But I've noticed that if I don't go, I'm a mess. Like and it's not that it wasn't necessarily the case with all those other exercises, because I think I was always just kind of doing it. But now, like, I realize like I actually get this relief when I go to CrossFit. So now I feel like this morning I actually woke up. I hadn't really eaten very well on the weekend, like a lot of people do. And so you wake up and you're just like, I was thrown off, and I like just went to CrossFit because that's what I do. Like it's not even like a thought anymore, right? So I just went because it's Monday and it's a habit, and that's when I do it. And I really wasn't in it. I really wasn't mentally in it. Like when I first got there, but then afterwards I felt so much better. I felt like relief. I felt so good. So I was like, this is why we do it.
Yeah, it was the same. Like this morning, I told myself this week I'm going back to working out at 8:30 instead of at night, and so I woke up and I was like, I'm not feel ready to work out, but I'm just gonna go. And then afterwards you feel good. So
we have a visitor.
Oh, you have a visitor.
Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think developing habits like that, like CrossFit is like a big one that we all helps all of us in certain ways. But having those little what am I? I'm so distracted. No, it's okay. But just having those habits in place, and like when you are missing one, like when you take a week off or something, and then like anxiety can build just from that. Like, man, I haven't been at the gym in 4 days. Like, going from having it in your normal routine to taking it out.
Right.
Even though the body needs that sometimes, it's a good thing.
But a rest.
Usually.
Yeah. But too much time and go back to feeling awful.
It's I agree. Yeah, it's for sure. It's tough. It's not easy to take that much time off.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Really cool part of exercise and mental health too is there's so many different feel-good hormones that get produced when you exercise, like dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, all that stuff. But they show that the brain can grow in many ways with exercise in regards to like neuroconnections and growing neurons, but specifically the hippocampal region of the brain, and that can grow tremendously with sustained exercise, and that is the region of the brain that controls emotional regulation as well. So it's a direct link to being able to control depression, anxiety, addiction, stuff like that. That's why exercise is so important. Any way that mental health manifests itself.
Right.
It's very important in that sense.
Yeah. It's true.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like going back to what you had mentioned about like people are just exercising to lose weight and look good, and feel good, which are all good, valid reasons,
Right.
But I think the mental piece is seriously overlooked by like your average gym goer or average CrossFitter or something, and it definitely needs to be acknowledged because
I think it actually should be top priority almost because
absolutely.
When you are feeling better mentally and more stable or whatever it is, when you're feeling better, like you have a better outlook on life and you treat your family better and your kids better, everybody feels better being around you because you feel better.
Right. Exactly.
And so like that's should be like almost the number one reason to go. You know, to mentally feel better. And then from there, like physically you feel great and that's wonderful, but
Yeah, definitely. Like the part of the core aspect of CrossFit is like that we're focused on performance and how you're moving, how fast you're going, the intensity piece, and then the side effect of that is looking good, feeling good.
Right, but it's definitely it's obviously incorporated like the mental part of it because the mental toughness is there. Like it's pushing you, like that's built into the workout. Right?
Yeah.
So obviously that's part of it. Like
Yeah.
So
and you definitely have to make that connection. It's important when you can do that and you're at work and your boss throws something on your desk and get this done by the end of the day and it's long and miserable. It's like, all right, well, it wasn't as bad as that WOD we did last night.
Right, I can do this.
You're on your second set of 100 push-ups in Murph. It's not as bad as that. Like things like that. Or that second mile or whatever. You always have that to refer back to. Which is really cool and another piece that you get here that you don't get elsewhere.
How have you seen this spill into your either professional life or personal life?
Yeah, I think it's actually helped. So I think sometimes when you have anxiety or depression, it actually takes you back self-esteem wise. I think you take a hit to your self-esteem because you have moments where you're always second-guessing yourself. You're beating yourself up over a conversation that you had or something that you didn't do or did do or So your self-esteem is constantly getting knocked down by yourself, not by anybody else, right? Like you're building everybody else up, but you're tearing yourself down. And that's a constant with people, especially when you suffer from anxiety or depression. And so I feel like when I come to CrossFit, and especially on the days like where I do something that maybe I didn't do before, I did more of them or whatever, it's like a small boost to your self-esteem when you feel like, wow, like you did something extra, you did it. And I think that when you have that, it carries over into everything, like your whole day. Like you feel like you're more capable of doing things. And so it's been a huge, I think, self-esteem boost, right? Like it's been neat. It's been such a neat experience, So, so that's how it carries over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting out of your comfort zone and like doing things that you never thought you'd ever be capable of doing has a tremendous carryover.
Yeah, and I feel like you almost see that daily with different people, and like, oh my, I never thought I would be able to do that, and then they do it, like and it's maybe for one other person it's the most simple of things, but for them it's huge. And,
like your first pull up, anything like that, you're like, I'll never be able to jump on top of that box.
Right.
Stuff like little things like that, and then you do it, and you're like, okay, I am capable. And I think a lot of people myself included, have a hard time giving themselves credit, you
Right.
know, for, you know, being good enough, or like, you know, being that capable person.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And here, people prove it every day.
Yeah, all the
And,
time.
You know, you don't
Yeah.
get that on the elliptical for a half hour. Or you
And
don't
what's
get
cool
that
is
on-
even if, like, we were doing something, and I was with Katrina and Jenny, and I you know, they were doing muscle ups, right? And they were just rocking them, and I did something, and it wasn't a muscle up. I don't even remember what it
Yeah.
was. It may have been just a strict pull up, right? And I was like so proud of myself, and they
should
were
be.
so proud of me. Like
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh my, like you did it!" Like they were all like high fiving me, and I was like, "This is like that's so cool, right?" Like that
Very.
I not only am I proud of myself, but like they were genuinely proud of like the work that I had done. Right?
Yeah.
So like that's neat. Like you have that
Yeah.
feeling.
It's
right?
really neat.
Like everybody's rooting for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, every
Because they've all
day-
been there. They've all worked their way up,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So they all know the progression.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
yeah.
just because somebody's doing muscle ups doesn't mean that they could always do pull ups.
Right,
you know?
exactly,
And
yeah.
they know how hard they see how hard you work. They know how hard they work to get to
Right.
things that they're doing. So
Yeah.
when you see someone else, it is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah,
It's
you're
just
in that struggle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be just as exciting as your own PRs.
It is. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really cool. So, I guess what would you, if you could say something to someone struggling with anxiety or that, you know, about whether it be CrossFit or related or just anything, you know, maybe we'll say like 2 or 3 things that, you know, somebody could take away from listening to this to go out and do.
Yeah, so one
for
is,
themselves.
I think the first would be like, just like say it, tell somebody, like open up about it, because like once you do, like it's no longer just your little fight with this thing anymore. Now it's like you can talk about it and open up about it, and it feels so much better. It feels like you're breathing when you can just tell someone and get it off your chest.
Right.
So don't be embarrassed, talk about it. And definitely try to exert that extra energy.
Yeah.
Get it out. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, and try CrossFit if you haven't tried it.
It's always a good
Come
one.
see me. Yep. I don't know what else I would say. I
Okay.
don't know. Yeah.
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 No, I think this is great, and I think what you've experienced through CrossFit and helping, and what you know, many people have.
Right.
We definitely, like, a big project of ours is getting, you know, outside of the CrossFit bubble and reaching, you know, people that may think that CrossFit isn't for them. So I think
Yeah.
that getting this out there is really
Yeah,
really
I think
cool,
it's
and-
disheartening when people think that they can't do CrossFit because they aren't fit enough, and that's
Right.
like so silly to me.
Yeah.
Like you can do it. Like there's all these different options, and it's scaled, and you know you can do it. Like
Right.
and we all started somewhere, right?
Right.
So you can work your way up.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to, like, you know, you can't, it'd be like if I asked someone to play pickup basketball and they said no because they don't play in the NBA or
Right.
something like
Yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
like stuff like that.
I
Yeah.
heard a good analogy the other day. It's like if you went to, if like you needed to go to a therapist and you're like, no, I need to get my mind right first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
True.
Yeah.
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 So hopefully, you know, people hear this and, you know, hear your story and how this
Yeah.
has helped, and they can, you know, and maybe CrossFit's not it for some people, although obviously we think it is.
Right.
But, you know, if they find something, or, you know, start saying it out loud, and
Right.
just helping themselves out that way. You're good enough, whoever you are.
Alex loves you.
I love you, everybody. But yeah, anything else to add, or
I
any
don't think so.
other questions we have? I think this was great. Good stuff. Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for the time in the middle of the afternoon, coming down to chat. Wasn't as scary as
No, it's
thought it was
okay.
gonna be.
Right, yeah.
Good. Good. We're just chatting.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, leave, you know, comments, questions. You know, we're always, again, looking for stuff to talk about. So, you know, give us some ideas. Unless you want to hear our ideas. But we always have great ones. So. All right, guys. Until next time.